The purpose of this video is to look at the counts and survival metrics within HeiferTracker. HeiferTracker is one of the tracker series within PCDART, and it can be accessed by choosing the analysis menu and then simply selecting HeiferTracker. Again, other aspects of HeiferTracker are reviewed in different videos. This one we're simply going to look at the counts listed at the bottom and the survival analysis. So I'll select those and I'll choose my date range and I'll do it relative to last test day for the last 12 months and hit preview. The first 4 rows are simply counting events that happen each month. Again, January 09 is a partial month denoted by 2 asterisks, so that only counts the 31st for one day of that month. But let's look at our first full month of February 09. There were no aborts, heifer aborts that month. They sold 1 animal for non-dairy purposes in February of 09, and no animals were sold for dairy purposes. So you can look month to month and see that this dairy, towards the latter part of 09, was selling quite a few heifers for dairy purposes. Apparently they must have had a surplus of heifers, which is a good problem to have. And they did lose an occasional heifer here and there that were for non-dairy reasons. Okay, and then next are counting deads, and these are dead heifers, not counting DOAs or stillborn calves. So these are calves that were born alive. Of calves that were born alive, how many of them actually died? Okay, and again, like all the tracker series, we can click on any cell and get a list of those animals, and we can dump this to Excel. From this window, we can go to the cow page, or we can dump that to Excel. Same functionality as all the trackers and all the other aspects of HeiferTracker. Now, the last 4 rows are related to survival. And each survival cell here is relative to a 1-month cohort of heifers. So let's look at our first full month of of February 09. We had a 98% survival rate. So if we go back and look at heifers that were born 2 to 3 months ago, relative to February of 09, 2 to 3 months ago, how many of those calves lived through 2 months of age? So again, taking a 1-month cohort group. In February 09, it happened to be 98%. For 6-month survival, we look at a 1-month group of heifers again, except now we're looking at those who were born 6 to 7 months ago, and that happened to be a 95% survival rate. Okay, and the next row, we're looking at percent survival to 16 months of age. So we're looking at a 1-month group of heifers that were born 16 to 17 months ago. Okay, so again, as you see here, we're not necessarily looking at the same heifers, so the numbers are going to be slightly different. Like, it seems odd here that we have a higher survival to 16 months than we did at 6, but that's because these are different cohort groups. These animals representing that 98% were born 16 to 17 months ago. The animals representing that 95% were born 6 to 7 months ago. Okay, and survival to 30 months of age, again, is look at animals that were born 30 to 31 months ago, and that number is a total of 78% for February of 09. Okay, so all those numbers are calculated month by month, but then there's one other aspect of this survival that is called the survival curve. And up on the top menu bar, there's a little graphing icon, and if that graph is chosen, then a window with a series of date ranges is generated. And each one of these date ranges corresponds to a month on our monthly table. The last month being January of 2010, the table will represent a 30-month window of heifers born. So the last month, January of 2010, the last column there, represents July 16th of 07 to January 31st of 2010. So that, again, is heifers born over a 30-month period. So let's generate the survival curve. And there it is. Okay, that's, again, the survival curve selected for January, for the current month, January of 2010. So the date range is July 16th, 07 to July 31st of 2010. And this uses the Kaplan-Meier method, which is a well-documented method for calculating survival. So this herd, you can see, again, we're looking at a lot of momentum here, a lot of time, because we're looking at animals over 30 months. But realize with this survival curve and all the other cohort survival analysis, which were previously described, we're only counting heifers born alive. We're not counting heifers that were born dead, stillborns, or DOA. So these are heifers born alive. And then heifers that are sold for dairy purposes are censored out at the point or age at which they are sold for dairy purposes. So in other words, a heifer that's sold at 14 months of age for dairy purposes, she counts positively up until 14 months of age as a survivor, and then after 14 months she's removed from the calculation, so she's not held against the survival after 14 months of age. Okay, so this dairy, you can see they've got about a 1% death loss by 2 months of age. So their wet calf death losses are very, very low. Lose a few more post-weaning, and then as you move along, you know, they lose a few here and there. Some, I'm guessing at this point, are animals that probably haven't gotten pregnant. And then lo and behold, at the end, they're running here currently about 95% of their calves born alive, freshened on this dairy, and that is a phenomenal number. Not many dairies achieve this level of success. So as of January 2010, looking back over the last 30 months, we can say that about 95% of the calves born alive on this dairy freshened. And again, we censored out those that are sold for dairy purposes. That's an important note. So this is a highly successful dairy in that regard. So again, these survival curves are accessed by clicking on that graphing icon, and then each one of these date ranges corresponds to 30 months prior to the date listed in the column of the monthly table.